What's up, you guys? Marty Schwartz here. Now, I know you've got at least a favorite song that's a total guilty pleasure. But why are certain songs guilty pleasures? Does this mean you secretly have bad taste? Do you really need to head to the confessional booth just because you're a Lady Gaga superfan? Let's start at the beginning. What even is a guilty pleasure? The term means something a little different to everyone. But generally, a guilty pleasure is something you really like, but know is really bad for you. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll can be guilty pleasures, and so can a third slice of cake or the metal zone pedal. For music lovers, we usually talk about guilty pleasures when we happen to like a song that may seem out of step with music you normally listen to, and it kind of makes sense. Try to imagine the biggest Metallica fan you know cranking up Ariana Grande, or Mr. Prog Rock guy wondering if his favorite song might actually be Blitzkrieg Bop. Seems a little incongruous, right? But all the artists I've mentioned so far, Lady Gaga, Ariana Grande, and even the Ramones, fall under the very broad category of pop music. And pop songs in particular are usually labeled guilty pleasures because, well, sometimes it feels like they force you to like them against your will. Here's the thing, if you have a human brain, you like patterns, whether you want to or not. From figuring out when seasons change to knowing when it's time to stop drinking bottles marked poison. Patterns also ensured that Hall & Oates would one day be millionaires. She's a man-eater. And just like how the good people at Coca-Cola scientifically formulated their product to be delicious and refreshing to as many people possible on planet Earth, pop musicians do the same thing with songwriting. Prince, Paul McCartney, Max Martin, there are a handful of songwriters who seem to have an innate understanding of how to write songs that are broadly appealing to most people. Plus, study after study has been done examining the science and psychology of how the human brain reacts to music. Songs with faster tempos, generic but memorable melodies, and unusual interval structures are more likely to be earworm guilty pleasures that get stuck in your head for days on end. What I just described is basically pop music. But here's what I think. Songs shouldn't even count as guilty pleasures because music is not bad for you, ever. Guilty pleasure songs don't raise your cholesterol. They don't insult your mother. In fact, hearing upbeat music can actually trigger your brain into releasing dopamine, basically the chemical that will make you want more and more of those toe-tapping tunes. You see why it's a vicious cycle? It's actually even more ironic than that. Further studies have shown that people most likely to get earworms stuck in their heads are people who are constantly exposed to music in the first place. That is, music fans. So every time you listen to something you like, you may actually be conditioning your brain to like everything. What I've just described can be extremely annoying. No one wants to hum Seven Nation Army for 6 months straight, but is there any reason to throw the word guilty in there? Why is it considered embarrassing to have ears and a brain that can recognize patterns? I think I know the answer to this, and it's social dynamics. I kind of brought this up at the beginning, but why can't a prog rock fan enjoy fast and dirty garage rock from time to time? Why can't someone who sees the genius in Master of Puppets also see the genius in Ariana's Into You? Every subculture and fandom has a version of this. I always like to imagine a turn of the 20th century classical music aficionado secretly trying to enjoy a little ragtime on the down low. So genre hopping can feel a bit like dipping your toes into a guilty pleasure, especially if your buddies can give you a hard time for it. And guilty pleasures, when we're just talking about personal preferences, will obviously vary from person to person. A tween Taylor Swift fan might think of Green Day as a guilty pleasure band for a lot of reasons. It's a different genre than what she's normally listening to. Her friends might tease her, and she might feel weird for liking music from an older generation. After all, Dookie is a classic rock album from a 12-year-old's point of view. Also, tastes change. Things fall in and out of fashion all the time. And whether or not something is popular at the moment may determine if it's a guilty pleasure or not. Just look at 80s arena rock. Everyone loved it, then everyone hated it. Nirvana was cool, grunge was cool, and only the bravest of the brave in 1994 were saying, actually, Don't Stop Believing is a pretty fun song. But now that everyone and their grandma is back to cranking Toto's Africa at weddings and funerals, few people consider 80s rock a guilty pleasure anymore. So here's my final take. Like what you like, thank your big beautiful brain for knowing how to recognize patterns, shake the hand of the young woman unafraid to tell her friends that Dookie is the next level. As always, the coolest thing you can do is to do whatever you want. Alright, time for brutal honesty. Tell me your #1 favorite guilty pleasure song in the comments below. And while you're down there, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for supporting Marty Music, and we'll see you real soon.